It's been 15 years, but I still get chills remembering that night on the road. My name is Carlos, and I was a rookie truck driver, eager to prove myself. On that fateful trip, I was supposed to deliver a load of electronics to a town in the countryside, some 800 kilometers away. I left late at night, thinking I'd save time. The full moon hung in the sky like a watchful eye, casting strange shadows across the deserted road. The roar of the engine was my only company as I cut through the darkness. Around 3 a.m., my eyes began to feel heavy. That's when I saw a sign indicating a gas station 5 kilometers away. Perfect, I thought. I'll have a coffee and stretch my legs. But something was wrong, very wrong. As I approached the station, I noticed that the lights were off. Strange for a place that should be open 24 hours. Even so, I decided to stop. Maybe they were saving energy. I parked the truck and got out. The silence was deafening. Not even the crickets were singing. A shiver ran down my spine when I realized that my footsteps made no sound on the asphalt. Suddenly, I heard a whisper, "Help!" so low that I thought it was my imagination. But there it was again, "Help! Please!" It was coming from behind the post. My heart raced. Should I ignore it and walk away? But what if someone really needed help? I swallowed and decided to investigate. With hesitant steps, I went around the dark building. What I saw there made me freeze with terror. A figure was crouched on the ground. It looked like a man, but something about his proportions was wrong. His limbs were too long, almost ungainly. His head, too big for its body, was low. "Hey, are you okay?" My voice came out shaky. Slowly, the figure raised its head. Our eyes met and, well, what happened next changed my life forever. But before I tell you, I need you to understand. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about our world. Are you ready for the truth? Our eyes met and I felt my blood run cold. That wasn't human. Its eyes were too big, black as pitch, with no visible irises or pupils. Its skin was pale, almost translucent in the moonlight. And its mouth, God, that mouth opened in a grotesque smile, revealing rows of teeth as sharp as needles. "Thank you for coming," said the creature, its voice sounding like nails scratching a blackboard. I was so hungry. My body screamed to run, but I was paralyzed with fear. The creature stood up, unfolding to an impossible height. It must have been over 2.5 meters tall, with arms that reached almost to the ground. In the blink of an eye, it was centimeters away from me. The smell of rot emanating from it was nauseating. I felt its sharp claws brush against my face. "You'll do," she whispered. "But I need more. Call the others." Confused and terrified, I stammered, What others?" The creature tilted its head, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. "Your friends on the road, the other truck drivers. Call them. Tell them you need help." At that moment, I understood the horror of the situation. This thing was using truck drivers as food, and now it wanted me to lure others into its trap? "No," I muttered, finding a courage I didn't know I had. "I won't do it." The creature's eyes blazed with a supernatural fury. "Then you'll be the first," it growled. In a move too fast for my eyes to follow, the creature grabbed my arm. The strength was unbelievable. I screamed in pain as I felt bones breaking under its grip. But the scream seemed to confuse the creature. It backed away, covering its ears with its long hands. I realized that loud sounds were bothering it. I took my chance and ran towards my truck. My arm was throbbing, but the adrenaline was driving me on. I jumped into the cab and turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life and I hit the gas. Through the rearview mirror, I saw the creature recovering and coming towards me at a terrifying speed. But I was already on the road, accelerating as hard as I could. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it was going to explode. I drove for hours without stopping, too terrified to slow down or look back. When the sun finally rose, I could breathe a little easier, but I knew it wasn't the end. Somehow, I sensed that the creature was still out there, waiting. And worse, there were more of them. What I had seen was just the beginning of something much bigger and much scarier. In the days that followed, I tried to convince myself that it was all just a hallucination caused by tiredness. But the marks on my arm and the nightmares that tormented me every night were proof that it had really happened. I decided to investigate. I began to discreetly ask other truck drivers if they had ever had strange experiences on the road. Most laughed and told stories of harmless hauntings or urban legends, but some turned pale and quickly changed the subject. It was on a rainy afternoon, in a roadside cafe, that I finally got some answers. I sat down next to a gray-haired man who introduced himself as Joaquim. He had the tired look of someone carrying an enormous weight on his shoulders. "You saw one of them, didn't you?" he asked quietly, without looking at me. I felt a shiver run down my spine. "How do you know?"
Joaquim sigue de Eple.
"Because I saw it too, and I wasn't the only one." He told me that for decades there had been a secret group of truck drivers who knew the truth. They called the creatures predators of the road. "They've been around longer than we realize," Joaquim explained, using the highways as their hunting ground. Truckers, lone travelers, were easy prey. But why doesn't anyone do anything? Why don't we report it? I asked incredulously. Joaquim laughed bitterly. "And who would believe it? We've tried. At best, we're ridiculed. At worst, well, let's just say that there are powerful people who prefer to keep it a secret." He told me about an obscure organization that apparently protected the predators. In exchange for a few human lives, the creatures provided something valuable. Exactly what Joaquim couldn't say. "But there is a resistance," he whispered, his eyes finally meeting mine. "A group of us who try to protect the innocent and find out the truth. We're always watching, always alert." At that moment, I realized that my life had changed forever. I was now part of something bigger, a secret battle taking place in the shadows of our roads. Joaquim handed me a small modified radio. "Use this to communicate with us. Secure channels, frequencies that they can't intercept." As I got up to leave, Joaquim grabbed my arm. "Remember, kid, the night is theirs, but the road is still ours." I left that cafe with my head spinning. The truth was scarier than I could have imagined, and I knew there was no turning back. From that day on, every trip became a mission, every stop a calculated risk. I was no longer just a truck driver. I was a guardian, a protector of those who traveled unaware of the danger lurking in the shadows. But the worst was yet to come. I would soon discover that the road predators were just the tip of the iceberg of a much more sinister and far-reaching conspiracy. The following weeks were a whirlwind of new information and responsibilities. Through the radio Joaquim had given me, I was introduced to the secret network of vigilant truck drivers. We were the eyes and ears of the roads, always alert, always ready to act. I learned the codes and signals. Headlights flashing 3 times quickly meant imminent danger. A long horn followed by 2 short ones was a call for help. Every gas station, every roadside restaurant had its classification. Green for safe, yellow for suspicious, red for proven dangerous. One night, while driving along the BR-116, I received an encrypted transmission. "Bird fallen into nest 237. Repeat. Bird fallen into nest 237. My heart raced. Nest 237 was the code for a gas station about 20 kilometers from my position. Bird down meant that a truck driver was in danger. I pressed down on the accelerator. Within minutes, I saw the lights of the gas station. I parked strategically, blocking the main exit with my truck. Armed with a powerful flashlight and a whistle, we discovered that high-pitched sounds disoriented predators. I cautiously made my way down. The station seemed deserted, but I knew better. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end when I heard a low moan coming from behind the main building. I skirted around the building, my heart hammering in my chest. The scene I found chilled my blood. A young truck driver was lying on the ground, and crouching over him was a creature similar to the one I had encountered months ago. Without a second thought, I blew the whistle. The shrill sound cut through the night air. The creature squealed in pain, its long hands covering what appeared to be ears. I took advantage of the distraction to reach down and pull out the injured truck driver. He was conscious, but could barely move. "Go on. Let me," he muttered, terrified. "No way, buddy," I replied, dragging him towards my truck. The creature recovered, its black eyes fixed on us, a low growl emanating from its throat. I kept blowing the whistle as we retreated. We made it to the truck. I threw the wounded man into the cab and jumped into the driver's seat. The creature advanced, furious. I turned the key and the engine roared to life. I stepped on the gas, the wheels singing on the asphalt. Through the rearview mirror, I saw the creature diminish until it disappeared into the darkness. Only when we were miles away did I allow myself to relax a little. The man next to me was shaking in shock. "Thank you," he whispered. I thought it was the end of me." "What's your name?" I asked, trying to keep him conscious. "Miguel," he replied weakly. "Well, Miguel, welcome to the club," he said, a bitter smile on his lips. "We have a lot to talk about." As I drove towards safety, I couldn't help thinking, how much longer could we keep up this secret struggle? How many more like Miguel would have to go through this terror before we could expose the truth to the world? And most importantly, who or what was really behind the road predators? I had a feeling that we were only scratching the surface of something much bigger and much more dangerous. Weeks have passed since Miguel's rescue. He joined our protection network, becoming another pair of vigilant eyes on the roads. But the incident made us all more tense, more aware of the constant danger we faced. It was on a rainy Wednesday night that things began to change dramatically. I was making a routine delivery when my encrypted radio crackled with an urgent message. "Attention all Guardians. Emergency rendezvous at point 0. Repeat. Emergency rendezvous at point 0. Code red." My heart raced. Code red meant critical information. Point 0 was an old abandoned shed, our most secret and secure meeting place. I rerouted my route immediately. 3 hours later, I parked my truck next to dozens of others. The air was charged with tension as I entered the dimly lit shed. Joaquim stood in the center, next to a hooded figure I had never seen before. The hubbub stopped when the old truck driver raised his hand. "Comrades," he began, his deep voice echoing in the silence. "Today could be the day that changes everything. This man," he pointed to the hooded figure, "claims to have crucial information about the predators and who controls them." The mysterious man stepped forward and lowered his hood. He was a middle-aged man with deep-set eyes and scars on his face. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse, as if it hadn't been used for a long time. "My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I worked for them, for the organization that protects and controls the predators." A murmur went through the crowd. The man continued, "They call themselves the Guardians of Twilight, a secret society that has existed for centuries. The predators are not from this world, but from somewhere beyond. The Guardians brought them here." He paused, his eyes sweeping the audience. "In exchange for human lives, the predators provide something invaluable: knowledge, advanced technology, secrets of the universe, power beyond imagination." I felt my stomach turn. It was worse than we had imagined. "But there's more," continued the informant. "The predators are multiplying. The original agreement is falling apart. They want more, always more, and the Twilight Guardians are losing control." He then revealed the reason for his defection. He discovered that the Guardians were planning to expand the predators' hunting grounds beyond the roads. Entire cities could become slaughter zones. "I have proof," he said, pulling a flash drive out of his pocket. "Locations of secret bases, names of important members, details about the predators that you can't even imagine." The silence that followed was palpable. We were at a crossroads. With this information, we could finally expose everything. But in doing so, we would be declaring open war against a powerful organization and bloodthirsty supernatural entities. Joaquim looked at all of us, his face a mask of determination. "The choice is ours, comrades. Do we remain in the shadows, or do we bring all this to light?" As heated debates began around me, I realized that our struggle was about to enter a new and dangerous phase. The roads I knew and loved would never be the same again. And what about me? Was I ready for what came next? The debate that followed was intense and heated. Some argued that we should expose everything immediately. Others feared the consequences of openly confronting such a powerful organization. In the end, after hours of discussion, we reached a consensus. We needed to act, but with caution and strategy. We decided to form an elite team. I, along with Joaquim, Miguel, and 3 other experienced truck drivers, were in charge of verifying the informant's information and planning our next steps. The rest of the group would continue with their normal activities, keeping their eyes open and protecting the roads. Over the next few weeks, we delved deep into the rabbit hole. The information on the USB stick was both frightening and fascinating. There were details about the biology of the predators, maps of their hunting grounds, and most shockingly, a list of influential people who were part of the Twilight Guardians. Politicians, businessmen, even a few celebrities. Their reach was greater than we had imagined. One night, while we were analyzing the documents in a safe hiding place, we heard a noise outside. Miguel went to check and came back pale. "We're surrounded," he whispered. He barely had time to finish his sentence when the door burst open. Masked men burst in, guns drawn. They weren't predators, but something told me they weren't much better. "Guardians of the Twilight," Joaquim muttered next to me. We were quickly subdued. While we were being handcuffed, a man in a suit calmly entered the room. His face was familiar. I recognized him from the photos on the USB stick. He was one of the leaders of the Guardians. "Did you really think you could mess with forces beyond your comprehension without consequences?" he said, his voice cold and controlled. I was thrown into a dark van with the others. My mind raced, trying to find a way out. Where were we being taken? What would they do to us? The journey seemed to last for hours. When we finally stopped, we were dragged out. We were in some kind of underground complex. Fluorescent lights flashed ominously as we were led down endless corridors. That's when I heard it, a sound that chilled me to the bone. The same low growl I heard that fateful night at the gas station. The predators were here. We were pushed into a large circular room. In the center, behind a barrier of reinforced glass, stood 3 predators. Their black eyes stared at us with a primal hunger. The man in the suit approached, a cold smile on his lips. "Welcome to the heart of the operation, gentlemen. You wanted answers? Here they are." He gestured to the predators. "Our alien partners are getting impatient. The agreement we've had for centuries is wearing thin. They want more. And unfortunately for you, we need to make an example." My heart raced when I realized what he meant. I looked at my companions, seeing the same terror in their eyes. "But don't worry," the man continued, his tone almost casual. "Your deaths will not be in vain. They will serve as a warning to anyone who thinks of interfering in our business." As he spoke, I saw Joaquim discreetly fiddling with something on his wrist. Our gazes met and he gave a slight nod. Suddenly, a deafening whistle echoed through the room. The predators screamed in pain, writhing behind the glass. The guards, taken by surprise, hesitated for a moment. That was all we needed. "Now!" shouted Joaquim. Chaos ensued. We took advantage of the confusion to fight back against our captors. Alarms sounded throughout the complex. In the midst of the fighting, I saw the glass separating the predators begin to crack. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the room, overlapping with the alarms and screams. The predators, freed from their prison, threw themselves at the nearest guards with primal fury. The leader of the Twilight Guardians, his face contorted with rage and fear, shouted inaudible orders as he ran for the exit. "Let's go!" shouted Joaquim, grabbing my arm. "This is our chance." We ran towards the door, dodging the chaos around us. Miguel stumbled in front of me and I pulled him by the collar, dragging him with me. The corridor in front of us seemed endless, the red emergency lights flashing frantically. "This way!" shouted one of our companions, pointing to an emergency staircase. We climbed the steps 2 by 2, our lungs burning with the effort. Behind us, we could hear the agonized screams of the guards and the sound of heavy footsteps. The predators were in pursuit. We reached a level that seemed to be the first floor. A heavy metal door blocked our exit. Joaquim and I threw ourselves against it, feeling it slowly give way. "Faster!" shouted Miguel, looking back in terror. "They're coming!" With one last joint effort, the door opened. The cool night air hit us. Never before had freedom tasted so sweet. We were in some kind of abandoned industrial complex. Huge sheds and inactive chimneys loomed against the night sky. "Over there!" One of our team pointed to a group of parked vehicles. "We can use one of them to escape." We ran towards the cars, the sound of metal being torn echoing behind us. The predators had just burst through the door. I reached a van first. Years of practice in starting trucks without keys had finally done some good. Within seconds, the engine roared to life. "Get in!" I shouted, opening the side doors. My companions threw themselves in as I hit the gas. The tires screeched on the asphalt as we sped out of the complex. Through the rearview mirror, I saw the silhouettes of the predators receding into the distance, their cries of frustration lost in the night. We drove for hours, alternating between main and secondary roads, always on the lookout for any sign of pursuit. When we finally felt safe enough to stop, the sun was beginning to rise over the horizon. I parked the van at an abandoned gas station and collapsed behind the wheel, exhausted. The silence inside the vehicle was heavy, broken only by our panting. "What now?" asked Miguel, his voice trembling. Joaquim, looking like he had aged 10 years in one night, sighed deeply. Now the real battle begins." He was right. We had escaped, but at what cost? The Twilight Guardians knew who we were. The predators were loose, possibly without the control that had previously held them in check. And we had information that could change the world, but also made us targets. "We need a plan," I said, straightening up in my seat. "We can't just go back to our normal lives." "No," agreed Joaquim, "but we can't stay hidden forever either. We have a responsibility now." I looked at my companions, seeing determination mixed with fear in their eyes. We were bruised, exhausted, and scared, but we were also the only line of defense between the world we knew and the terror that lurked in the shadows. "So," I said, starting the engine again, "where do we start?" As we drove away from the abandoned gas station towards an uncertain future, I knew that our journey was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The roads ahead were more dangerous than ever, but they also offered the only chance to save not only our way of life, but perhaps all of humanity. And we, an unlikely group of truck drivers turned warriors, were ready to face whatever came our way. The fight against the road predators and the Twilight Guardians would be long and hard, but it was our fight, and we weren't going to give up. The days following our escape were a whirlwind of frantic planning and constant paranoia. We were constantly on the move, never staying in one place for more than a night. We used a network of trusted contacts, other truckers, gas station owners sympathetic to our cause, and even some highway patrol officers who suspected something strange was happening on the roads. Our first priority was to establish a secure base of operations. After much discussion, we decided on the most unlikely location, an old abandoned mine in the mountains. With the help of allies, we transformed the forgotten tunnels into a makeshift bunker, equipped with generators, supplies, and, most importantly, a secure communication system. It was in this underground refuge that we began to organize our resistance. Joaquim, with his experience and natural leadership, became our chief strategist. Miguel, surprisingly, turned out to be a technological genius, creating security systems and encryption programs that would keep our communications safe. I took on the role of recruiter and contact with the outside world. My years on the road gave me a network of contacts and an instinct for judging people's character that proved invaluable. Little by little, our small team grew. Truck drivers, mechanics, ex-military, investigative journalists, people from all walks of life who, in one way or another, had glimpsed the dark truth that lurked in the shadows of our roads. But we weren't the only ones on the move. Reports of predator attacks began to increase dramatically. No longer confined to isolated roads, they now dared to venture into more populated areas. The Twilight Guardians seemed to have lost total control over their extraterrestrial weapons. One particularly tense night, we received a cryptic transmission on our communication system. The eagle has fallen. The nest is compromised. Look for the raven at the crossroads of the old oak. Joachim paled when he heard the message. It's an ancient code, he explained, only used in extreme emergencies. Following the cryptic instructions, Miguel and I were sent to a remote meeting point. There, we met a hooded figure, the informant who had given us the initial information about the Twilight Guardians. The situation is worse than we imagined, he said, his voice shaking with exhaustion and fear. The predators, they're not just multiplying, they're evolving. He showed us photos and documents that made my blood run cold. The predators were developing new abilities: advanced camouflage, increased superhuman strength, and most terrifyingly, signs of collective intelligence. The Guardians have completely lost control, the informant continued. They're panicking, trying to contain the situation, but it's too late. In a matter of months, maybe weeks, there will be no hiding this from the general public. We returned to our base with this alarming news. The atmosphere was gloomy as we discussed our options. We can't hide anymore, I argued. We need to go public with this, alert people. And how do we do that without looking like lunatics? Asked Miguel. Who would believe us? It was then that Joachim, who had been silent until that moment, spoke up. We have to give people something they can't ignore: irrefutable evidence. His plan was bold and dangerous: to capture a predator alive. It's crazy, I said, but I knew we'd do it anyway. Over the next few weeks, we prepared for the riskiest mission of our lives. We trained, planned, and prayed. And then, on a moonless night, we set out to hunt down the hunters. What we found would change not only our lives, but the course of human history forever. The night was exceptionally dark when we set off on our suicide mission. 3 armored vehicles, equipped with the best we could improvise in terms of anti-predator technology, glided silently along the deserted road. Our team consisted of me, Joachim, Miguel, and 4 other highly trained members of our growing resistance. The plan was simple in theory, but incredibly dangerous in practice: lure a predator into a specially designed trap and capture it alive. Based on the informant's information, we chose an area where attacks had been more frequent in recent weeks. It was a remote region, with long stretches of road surrounded by dense forest, the perfect hunting ground for predators. We positioned our vehicles strategically, 2 hidden in the shadows of the trees and 1, piloted by Miguel and me, serving as bait on the road. The hours dragged by. The tension was palpable inside the vehicle. Every shadow, every noise from the forest, made our hearts race. It was just as we were about to consider changing location that it happened. A blur of movement in the rearview mirror. The sound of metal being scratched. Contact, I shouted into the radio, hitting the gas. The predator was on top of us, its monstrous form clinging to the roof of the vehicle. Razor-sharp claws began to pierce the reinforced metal. Miguel activated the electrical defense system we had installed. An inhuman scream echoed through the night as thousands of volts coursed through the creature's body. But it wasn't enough to bring it down. Plan B, I shouted, turning the steering wheel sharply. The vehicle skidded, heading towards a clearing where we had prepared our main trap. The predator, momentarily disoriented, fell off the roof. It was at that moment that the other 2 vehicles sprang into action, surrounding the creature with beams of intense light, one of the few things we knew that affected them negatively. The predator hissed, its jaws opening to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. It was larger than any we had seen before, its scaly skin reflecting the light in a strange way. Now, shouted Joachim over the radio. An electrified net was thrown over the predator. It struggled violently, its limbs contorting in ways impossible for human anatomy. It seemed that we had succeeded, that our crazy plan had worked. Then it all went wrong. The predator emitted a high-pitched sound, almost like a whistle. Suddenly, the forest around us came to life. Glowing eyes appeared between the trees. It wasn't one predator. There were dozens of them. It's a trap, shouted Miguel. They've lured us in. Panic set in. Our careful plans disintegrated in the face of the terrifying reality. The predators were not only more numerous than we had imagined, they were more intelligent. "Fall back," ordered Joaquin. "Get back to the vehicles." We ran back to our armored transport, the sound of claws scratching metal and hungry growls chasing us. We managed to get into the vehicle seconds before the predators caught up with us. We sped down the highway, our original formation completely forgotten in the desperate escape. It was the longest and most terrifying journey of my life. Predators chased us for miles, jumping on vehicles, trying to break the reinforced windows. When we finally lost them and arrived back at our base, we were exhausted, injured, and deeply shaken. "They're evolving faster than we imagined," said Joaquin, his voice laden with concern. "They're not just predators anymore, they're strategists." I looked at my companions, seeing the same fear and determination in their eyes that I felt in my own. Our mission had failed, but we had gained crucial information. The predators were getting organized, and if we didn't find a way to stop them soon, humanity would face a threat like never before. As we treated our injuries and began to plan our next move, one thing became clear. The war for Earth's future had officially begun, and we were humanity's only line of defense. The days following our disastrous capture mission were bleak. Failure weighed heavily on all of us, but more than that, the revelation of the Predator's intelligence and organization left us deeply shaken. We were no longer dealing with simple wild creatures, but with a coordinated and strategic alien force. It was in this climate of despair that we received an unexpected transmission. An electronically distorted voice, impossible to identify, echoed through our base. "Resistance, listen carefully. Not all Twilight Guardians are your enemies. There are dissidents among us. Meet them where the sun kisses the moon at midnight. Come prepared, but come in peace." The message caused an uproar in our base. Opinions differed drastically. Some saw it as a crucial opportunity, others as an obvious trap. After hours of heated debate, we decided to take a chance. Joaquin, Miguel, and I, along with two of our best agents, set off for the rendezvous. The place where the sun kisses the moon at midnight turned out to be an old abandoned astronomical observatory on top of a remote mountain. We arrived cautiously, weapons in hand, ready for any eventuality. To our surprise, we found only 3 figures waiting for us. 2 of them we recognized immediately: the leader of the Twilight Guardians we had confronted during our escape, and our mysterious informant. The third person was a middle-aged woman with a stern, determined look. "Welcome," said the woman, stepping forward. "I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of research at the Guardians of Twilight. Or at least I used to be." Over the next few hours, Dr. Vasquez told us a story that challenged everything we thought we knew about the Predators and the Guardians. The Predators, she explained, were not simply alien creatures that had arrived on Earth by chance. They were the result of an experiment that had gone horribly wrong. Decades ago, an alien ship crashed on Earth. The Twilight Guardians were formed to study and contain this extraterrestrial technology. However, some ambitious scientists decided to go beyond mere observation. Using the alien DNA found on the ship, they created hybrids, the first Predators. The original intention was to create super soldiers to protect humanity. But the Predators proved to be uncontrollable, escaping and reproducing rapidly. "What you've encountered recently," said Dr. Vasquez, "is the result of years of uncontrolled evolution. Predators are adapting, getting smarter. And now they have a leader." She showed us satellite images and field reports. At the center of all the Predator activity was a creature unlike any other, bigger, smarter, clearly in charge. "We call him Alpha," said the leader of the Guardians, speaking for the first time. "And he's planning something big. Something that could mean the end of human civilization as we know it." The gravity of the situation hit us like a punch in the gut. It was no longer just about survival on the roads. It was about the survival of the human species. "Why are they telling us this now?" I asked, still suspicious. "Because we can no longer control it ourselves," the informant replied. "The Guardians are divided. Some want to keep hiding the truth, Others want to use nuclear weapons to clean up infested areas. What about you? Asked Joaquim. We want to find a solution that doesn't involve destroying half the planet, said Dr. Vasquez. And for that, we need your help. I looked at my companions, seeing the same mixture of shock, fear, and determination that I felt. We were about to enter into an alliance with people who, until recently, we considered enemies. But in the face of the threat we were facing, old rivalries seemed insignificant. What do we need to do? I finally asked. Dr. Vasquez smiled slightly.